Hello, I'm Raymond Percy, and I'm a storyboard artist here at Walt Disney Animation Studios. Recently, the treatment to an alternate ending of The Jungle Book surfaced in our archives. Oftentimes, in creating a Disney animated film, there may be different endings that are tried through production before they actually land on the one that ends up in the movie. And that's exactly what happened with The Jungle Book. I was given the unique opportunity to storyboard this alternate ending, and I'm going to take you through it right now. I hope you enjoy it. Mowgli and Bagheera arrive at the Man Village and find it guarded by an old man holding a long-barreled musket. The fierce-looking old man raises his gun and fires at the two friends. But the bullet whizzes harmlessly over their heads. Bagheera growls, "That shot was meant for me, not you. Now get going, man cub." Mowgli hesitates, but Bagheera growls again. And Mowgli runs across the clearing to the village gate. The old man takes aim and is just about to pull the trigger when a younger man knocks the musket from his arms, causing the bullet to miss its mark. The young man yells, "Bulldio, are you crazy? You can't shoot a child!" Bulldio snarls in return, "He's bewitched. I saw him change from a leopard to a boy." As the villagers gather, a beautiful and delicate young woman appears and asks to see the boy. She whispers, "Nathu, can it be you?" Mowgli slowly creeps out from the bushes towards her. The man who saved Mowgli's life now comes forward and says, "He is no beast. He is our son, who was taken from us by the floods, brought back now by some miracle." Mowgli joins his parents and heads towards the village. Bagheera melts back into the jungle. We dissolve to Mowgli, now called Nathu, in the small walled-in yard of his parents' home. He has now learned the ways of man and has lived peacefully in the village for 3 months. But he is becoming restless and anxious. And suddenly, he leaps to the top of the garden wall and escapes into the village. His mother cries out for him to stop. Mowgli bounds away along the thatched rooftops of the village. Suddenly, Mowgli spots his old enemy Bulldio telling a group of spellbound children about how he killed the king of all tigers, Shere Khan. Mowgli listens to Bulldio's lies for a minute, but he cannot contain himself and he says, "I saw Shere Khan not too long ago. He is still very much alive." The old man flies into a fury. "No one believes you, jungle brat." "I did see him," says Mowgli, "on my way back from Monkey City." He tells the fascinated children about the fabled lost city with its great treasure of gold and silver and jewels. Bulldio scoffs at Mowgli's story. "The beast boy has caught the madness. He's been bitten by a jackal." Mowgli screams, "Shere Khan is alive, and he's become a man-eater, so you'd better be careful." Bulldio threatens Mowgli with his musket, but Mowgli's father steps between them and rescues his son. We dissolve to nighttime in the small house where Mowgli lives. He's in bed, staring at a fire. His parents are comforting him, telling him that it's okay that he made up a tall tale about seeing Shere Khan. They say goodnight and leave. Mowgli is troubled by all that has occurred. Suddenly, he has an idea. He lights a torch and leaps out the door. We dissolve to Mowgli running with his torch in the jungle. A herd of elephants panic at the sight of the fire, what they call man's red flower. He next terrorizes a rhino who screams, "The red flower! The red flower!" and goes crashing off through the trees. Mowgli finally reaches his destination, the Council Rock. He challenges Akela, "Come forward and face the weak man cub now!" We dissolve to a different part of the jungle, where Shere Khan becomes Mowgli's next target. Shere Khan hears Mowgli yell, "You yellow-striped coward! Mowgli the man cub has come back for you!" Mowgli appears with his torch and chases Shere Khan through the jungle, finally cornering him in a ravine. Mowgli taunts the cowering man-eater, asking, "Have you lost your taste for a man cub dinner?" before running off into the jungle again. Later that night, Mowgli is sitting in a lonely spot with only a small bonfire for company. Just then, Baloo and Bagheera enter the clearing. "So, you're back," growls Bagheera, "with the red flower." Mowgli says, "They don't want me in the village." He explains that he has come back to live in the jungle, bringing the fire to protect himself. His two friends walk off disgusted with Mowgli's behavior. "You've only succeeded in making more enemies," says Bagheera. "I'll have none of it," says Baloo. Shere Khan is in the jungle listening to everything that's going on. He waits patiently for Mowgli's fire to go out and then creeps into the clearing, ready to spring on the boy. But before he can attack, he is startled to see another torch, this one carried by Mowgli's sworn enemy, Buldeo. Buldeo wakes Mowgli up with a rough poke in the ribs with his rifle. "Lead me to the lost city and the treasure," he says. As they walk, Mowgli says, "I thought you didn't believe me." "You were right about Shere Khan being alive, so I knew you were telling the truth." "But it's a long way and I'm not sure I can find it." "Your life depends on it, boy." Shere Khan watches as the torch fades to a tiny speck in the distance, and then slinks after them. We dissolve to the duo arriving at Monkey City. Panic spreads among the monkeys when they see the red flower. They scramble wildly to escape. Mowgli leads Buldeo through the now deserted ruins as Shere Khan stalks them. The torchlight illuminates a glittering pile of gold, silver, and jewels. Buldeo stands mesmerized before the riches of an ancient kingdom. He forces Mowgli to fill a box with all the treasure he can carry. Mowgli staggers to his feet with the overflowing chest, and they begin their journey back to the village, with Shere Khan close behind. We dissolve. It is now much later, and Mowgli is exhausted from carrying the great weight. He stumbles over a root, and the treasure chest falls to the ground with a thud. Mowgli catches a glimpse of Shere Khan as he gets to his feet. He asks Buldeo what he plans to do about the man-eating tiger. Buldeo tells Mowgli he plans to set fire to the jungle, and that will take care of Shere Khan. Mowgli is horrified and begs Buldeo not to burn his beloved jungle. "I hate the jungle," says Buldeo as he forces Mowgli to continue. Suddenly, Buldeo orders Mowgli to drop the chest. "This is as far as you go. Into the jungle with you. If you love it so much, you can die with it." Mowgli springs at Buldeo and grabs the torch, tossing it into the river. Buldeo is enraged. He shouts, "There's still no way out for you, jungle brat!" Taking the treasure under his arm, he steps back and aims his rifle straight at Mowgli's heart. Mowgli says, "If you shoot me, you won't have a shot left for Shere Khan." And with that, he points to Shere Khan, who leaps at Buldeo, who screams, and then is silent. Mowgli crawls through the underbrush, searching for the rifle that Buldeo dropped in the attack. He finds it just before the tiger spots him, and boom! The scene fills with smoke. It's daylight, quiet and peaceful in the jungle. Mowgli is talking to his good friends Bagheera and Baloo. Mowgli is excitedly telling the story of his adventures. He stops in the middle of his hair-raising tale when he sees Bagheera grinning at him. "You don't believe me?" he asks. "I believe you," Bagheera says. "I can see it very plainly out there in the grass." He gestures towards the body of Shere Khan lying on top of Buldeo. The two good friends escort Mowgli back to the edge of the village as they tell him that he will now be celebrated as a hero in the village and in the jungle. From that day forward, Mowgli was admired and respected by all the people of the village. And sometimes he made a special trip to see his other family, the one in the jungle. For Mowgli no longer had enemies in the jungle. The Seeonee pack was reorganized under a new leader, and for the first time, a man cub was honored with full membership. And that man cub was Mowgli.
Many strange legends are told of these jungles of India, but none so strange as the story of a small boy named Mowgli.
When Walt Disney acquired the rights to Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, he undertook a monumental challenge in storytelling. Kipling's The Jungle Book was a sprawling series of stories about the wild child Mowgli, his life among the animals, his conflicts with Shere Khan, and his struggles to adapt to civilization. As he had done in the past with his animated classics from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs to Sleeping Beauty, Walt Disney devised an ingenious narrative approach to a literary masterpiece to mold it to his unique style of animated storytelling. A style so successful that to this day, when we think of those classic stories, most people remember the Disney versions. First among the challenges was to create a linear story from Kipling's episodic adventures that jump forward and back in time. Disney's top story man, Bill Peet, worked on the adaptation for over a year. When Peet left the studio after arguing with Walt over his approach to the story, he brought home photostats of the story sketches he had begun for his version of the Jungle Book. Now, with Peet's April 1963 treatment from the studio's archives and the recent rediscovery of Peet's photostats more than 40 years later in Bill Peet's home studio, we can see how the story evolved from Rudyard Kipling's original Mowgli stories to Bill Peet's unfinished version to Walt Disney's animated classic.
It all began when the silence of the jungle was broken by an unfamiliar sound.
The story's opening sequence, the discovery of Mowgli and his rescue by the wolves, exemplifies the different approaches of Kipling, Peet, and Disney. In Kipling, the wolves hear Shere Khan attacking a camp of woodcutters. The woodcutter's child wanders off and enters the wolves' cave. Mother Wolf protects Mowgli when Shere Khan comes to claim him. Bill Peet, wanting to add drama and suspense to Kipling's story, embellished the rescue of Mowgli. A man cub has been carried off by the river, clinging to a log. The wolves gather at the waterfall to watch the baby go over the edge. Bagheera tries to rescue the baby but fails. Mother Wolf saves the cub's life as he goes over the waterfall. Disney simplified this story's opening to a few elegant visuals, suggesting the flood by the image of the wrecked canoe. Throughout his adaptation, Bill Peet added dramatic details to Kipling's story. When Walt Disney took over the project, he simplified the narrative every step of the way to make room for character and entertainment.
What's the matter, old Papa Bear?
Look, Mowgli, I've been trying to tell you. I've been trying all morning to tell you. I've got to take you back to the Man Village.
The Man Village?
Bill Peet's greatest departure from Kipling's The Jungle Book turned out to provide the foundation for Disney's story. The Odyssey from the jungle back to the Man Village. That was the anchor that Walt and his story team kept returning to when they encountered difficulties. Kipling's Mowgli went back and forth between the jungle and the village, but the actual journey from jungle to civilization was a complete invention of Bill Peet and Walt Disney. The most complete sequence of Bill Peet's storyboards shows how Peet and later Disney used the journey to introduce characters. From Bill Peet's own treatment and storyboards.
An early morning mist hangs over the jungle, and Mowgli and Bagheera are still asleep. Suddenly, there's a violent shaking of the tree. Down below, an elephant herd is crowded about the tree, and a great bull bellows, "Man cub, what are you doing in my jungle?" And with his huge head, he gives the tree trunk another violent butt. "Hold on, Hathi," cries Bagheera. "Now don't worry about the man cub. He's on his way back to his village." As the great elephant starts away, he warns, "I'm no killer, man cub, but if I ever come across you in my jungle again, I'll be forced to it." Man and his red flower. "A close one indeed," exclaims Bagheera. "Now let's get moving before our luck runs out." And he leaps from the tree limb to land lightly on the ground. And as the boy scrambles down to join him, Bagheera takes a cautious look around before starting off. Suddenly a rhino comes crashing through the bush straight for Mowgli. "I smell a man cub," he bellows. "Death to the man cub!" The rhino wheels around in a fury, his tiny red eyes darting about in confusion. "I'll find you, man cub, wherever you are!" And Mowgli and Bagheera climb a ladder of stout, snaky vines until they are perched safely out of reach on a limb, while the nearsighted rhino goes blundering about far below, charging at bushes, stumps, and boulders in hopes one might be the man cub. Mowgli shakes with laughter, but Bagheera, as usual, remains sternly serious. "If you think this is funny," he growls, "you'll find many more laughs in this jungle. Have you ever tried laughing inside a python?" The boy looks at the thick, ropey vine upon which he is sitting. It is a giant python, and while they've been talking, the big snake has quietly arranged a few of his large coils around the boy until he is wrapped like a mummy.
Bill Pete's Colonel Hothy and Caw were the starting points for Disney's more richly personified characters.
Those were the days. Discipline was the thing. Bill's character, all that sort of thing,
Pete's Rhino evolved in Disney's hands to a character named Rocky the Rhino, a punch-drunk fighter who showed up in storyboards of the Vultures sequence before being dropped from the story. Another element that Pete adapted from Kipling is the danger posed to the jungle by man's red flower, fire. In Kipling, fire is mentioned in the first scenes as the thing that animals fear and hate most about man. In Pete's story, Mowgli asked Bagheera about the red flower. In Pete's own words,
"Red flower in man talk is fire," replies Bagheera. "Fire?" puzzles Mowgli. Bagheera stops to stare at a charred black spire rising out of the ferns. That was once a great mango tree devoured by the red flower. Many years ago, the jungle creatures attacked man's village, destroyed his cane fields and cattle. Then man, in his anger, turned loose the red flower and destroyed the jungle and many of the beasts.
Later in Pete's story, Mowgli steals fire from the man village to challenge Shere Khan. In story meetings, Walt told his story team to steer clear of what he called the icky, sticky story stuff. Long dialogue-heavy scenes were not for his vision of the Jungle Book. In his ongoing emphasis on entertainment and comedy, the only touches Walt left of Kipling's Red Flower are with King Louie,
Laid a secret on me of man's red fire.
and in the final defeat of Shere Khan. The character of Baloo is another big departure from Kipling's story. Kipling describes Baloo as a sleepy, serious old brown bear, a noble teacher of the law of the jungle, who teaches Mowgli the secret words of all the animals so he is safe wherever he goes. Pete's Baloo laid the foundation for Disney's Baloo, a lazy, happy-go-lucky bear who gains a sense of responsibility through his love for Mowgli.
Doo-be-doo, doo-be-doo, doo. Why, you flat-nosed little-eyed flaky creep.
All three versions of the story feature the spectacular sequence of Mowgli's kidnapping by the Bandarlog, the monkey people. In Kipling, the ruined city of the monkeys is a frightening place. The monkeys roam the ruins, pretending to be men. They are people without a law. They want Mowgli to teach them how to weave sticks together to make shelter. Bill Pete tried to retain the mysterious qualities of Kipling's Bandarlog. They want Mowgli to show them how to rebuild the city and teach them the secret of fire. Pete introduced slapstick comedy into the sequence with the rescue of Mowgli by Baloo and Bagheera. Disney steered the entire episode toward personality and entertainment. King Louie, with Louie Prima's voice, evolves into a wonderfully comic character.
Now I'm the king of the swingers, oh, the jungle VIP.
Striving for a more richly developed story, Pete spun off from the idea of Kipling's The Second Jungle Book, a hidden treasure under the city. In Pete's version, the King of the Apes shows Mowgli the treasure he keeps under the palace. Mowgli has no interest in riches, but later in the story, a hunter from the man village forces Mowgli to lead him to the treasure. In both Kipling's and Pete's versions of the story, Mowgli returns to the man village and is reunited with the woman, Nathu, who may be his long-lost mother. He stays in the village for 3 months, learning the ways of man. In Kipling, a character from the village, a hunter named Buldeo, thinks Mowgli is a sorcerer or a man-wolf from the jungle and stirs up the villagers against him. Mowgli kills Shere Khan with the help of his brother wolves. He returns to the Wolf Council, but he is not allowed to stay. The story ends with Mowgli and his wolf brothers going off to hunt on their own. Bill Pete, having set up the treasure under Monkey City, was determined to weave that element into a dramatic climax. In his story, Mowgli leaves the village to return to the jungle. His new enemy, Buldeo the Hunter, follows and forces him to lead him to the treasure. Mowgli distracts Buldeo as Shere Khan attacks, killing the hunter. Mowgli uses the hunter's rifle to kill Shere Khan. In the end, Mowgli is a hero among both humans and animals. He lives in the village, but is free to come and go as he pleases in the jungle. This entire sequence was dropped from Disney's version. Walt Disney felt that the heart of the story was Baloo's responsibility to see that Mowgli gets back to the man village, and that their arrival to the village was the natural ending for the film. Walt's biggest question was, what draws Mowgli to the village after he spent the whole story trying to stay in the jungle?
Nothing or nobody is ever gonna come between us again.
When Bill Pete left the project, Disney had urged his story team to ignore Kipling's The Jungle Book and to concentrate on entertainment and personality. But in story meetings, when they were stuck for the ending, Walt kept browsing the book for ideas. He found inspiration in two passages, one from the end of Mowgli's stories in The Jungle Book. Years afterward, he became a man and married. And one from Kipling's The Second Jungle Book. A girl in a white cloth came down some path that led from the outskirts of the village. Mowgli parted the stalks with his hands and watched her until she was out of sight. And from those passages came the ending Walt had been searching for.
Till the day that I am grown.
Despite the falling out between Walt and Bill Pete, it's interesting to see how much the final version of Disney's The Jungle Book owes to the original work done by Pete.
Thank you for detaining my victim.
Disney simplified the story to the bare necessities. An odyssey home again. An odyssey through dangers and temptations, friendships and growing up. As he expressed in story meetings, fewer events equals more room for character.
Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities.
The enduring appeal of The Jungle Book is a testament to Walt Disney's understanding of his audience and his faith in his own vision. As he had proven with all his animated classics since Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Walt Disney had a profound ability to take literary classics and make them uniquely his own. With Kipling's The Jungle Book, he took a story that dramatized the differences between man and animals in a world where man is the danger, and transformed it into a delightfully entertaining musical adventure about the similarities between man and animals and the brotherhood of all living creatures.
I still think he'd have made one swell bear.